Hi, my name is Kathy Bissell. Welcome to the Golf Show 2.0. This week we have a gentleman who really is Emmy Award winning. And worse than that, he knows Gary Van Sickle. They were in college together. Gary, take it away.
He won an Emmy despite knowing me. We're very similar. I know someone named Emmy. He was on with Carson. I've been to Carson Street in Pittsburgh, and he's been on with Letterman. And I used to have a 45 by the Letterman. So very similar. The great Jeff Cesario. And I looked this up, Jeff, and maybe you have too. I looked up who's the biggest celebrity to ever come out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, your hometown.
Yeah, I would say I'm probably fourth or fifth. If
Well, you were actually the third person listed on Wikipedia, but that was because it's alphabetical, and the first category was artists and authors. So
well, Al Molinaro
Happy Days.
From Happy Days is from Kenosha.
You get all the Amicis. You got Alan and Jack, and then you've got
Don Amici, Alan and Don Amici.
Don Amici, and Alan was a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
I got a baseball player named Augie Schmidt.
Yeah, Augie was big when I was back there, man. That's wild. Then you have Mark Ruffalo, the actor from the contemporary actor, and also Orson Welles spent a minute in Kenosha.
Orson Welles is the correct answer, the most famous. The guy from The Right Stuff, Scott Glenn, is from Kenosha.
But people don't know who Orson Welles is anymore.
Scott Glenn is from Kenosha? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Daniel Travanti from Hill Street Blues.
Daniel Travanti, I know now. Travanti's above me, and there might you don't even have to separate. I was going to say they should have a separate list for Italians, but it's almost one and the same. You got Ruffalo, Molinaro, Travanti, Cesario. You got them all.
Yeah, Orson Welles is either correct answer. I also would have taken Jen Ledger of Skillet or Dave Matrive of Jungle Rot, two great rock groups.
Oh, sure. They're actually
I'm pretty sure you played percussion for one of those groups.
No, I never played for whatever those. What was that name? Jungle Rot. I've had Jungle Rot, but I never played for Jungle Rot.
Oh, and here's another one. Played with Neil Young, someone by the name of John Fumo.
Oh yeah,
but not Joe Fumo.
No, not Joe Fumo.
College buddies.
Yeah, no, John Fumo and Dan Fornero. Another. Kathy, you're getting a whole history lesson.
I was gonna stop you and have you explain to people where you went to school.
Oh well,
because we missed that.
The University of Wisconsin.
I haven't mentioned it. It's kind of a magic act too. I have sleight of mouth. A lot of people have sleight of hand. But Dan Fornero and John Fumo were both trumpet players, roughly my generation, a little younger, who came out of Kenosha and came here to Los Angeles and became two of the top call trumpet players in town. Really? And studio players. Yeah, they've played on everything. And in fact, Fornero, I'm not sure about Fumo, but Fornero played for like over a decade with Phil Collins.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there was just really good public school music education when I was in high school.
There used to be
in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I went to Mary D. Bradford, the first public high school west of the Alleghenies, I believe is the.
Really?
Well, I'm going to rank you behind Orson Welles and Al Molinaro. And I forgot one other name, Nick Van Exel, great basketball player.
Oh, Nick Van Exel, yeah.
But you are definitely in the top five. Congratulations.
And Melvin Gordon, the tremendous talent.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and if we're going to go way back, you got Alan Amici, the Heisman Trophy winner.
I might be like 11th now, which is kind
of you're close to the top 20.
You both were on the student newspaper at the University of Wisconsin.
That's right.
Journalism students.
Do you have a big clock in front of you that's saying we have to hit certain topics at certain times?
No, this is just for people who don't know everything about both of you, because they're going to wonder who are these people and Are they
Yeah.
talking
I would hope they would know Van Sickle because
No.
no,
No.
Well,
you're like a co-host of the
look,
podcast.
I don't know how many times I told you the future is print. The future is newspapers. And you could have bet you're the best sports writer who never was, because you foolishly got out of sports writing and got into this TV, entertainment, performing, the internet. Those are all fads that are gonna go away.
Yeah, they'll die soon. They might be.
The 2 Showtime specials. Who's gonna watch those? Come on. I don't even.
Yeah, let me tell you. I'll give
sitcom
it to you in a nutshell. I went to school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I wrote on the student paper with Gary Van Sickle and a bunch of really great journalists who proceeded to be journalists. I had a problem with facts that would get away, and I would often just write the funniest things that came to mind. And I was fortunate that I had people at the Daily Cardinal, the student newspaper at Wisconsin, who encouraged that. I then took that and eventually tried stand-up comedy and became somewhat adept at it. I moved out to Los Angeles. I did Letterman. I did the Tonight Show as a stand-up. I started to get some traction as a stand-up, and I wound up parlaying that into something else I'd always wanted to do, which was behind the cameras. So I wound up writing and executive producing a show called Dennis Miller Live for HBO.
Yes.
And that's where I won 2 Emmys. I went from there to the Larry Sanders Show, which is a very seminal show in television history from Gary, the great mind of Gary, the late great Gary Shandling. And then I proceeded to write some movies and kept writing in TV and kept doing stand-up and wound up writing for Queen Latifah's daytime show. And Russell Brand had a show that I wrote on for a while. And Brian Regan, another tremendous comic, had a Netflix show, and I wrote on that. So I've kept pretty busy up till this very point right here.
So
and that's we have to get into the specifics on our students.
This could be the stopper right here.
For people who want to know how to do that, is the secret you just move to Los Angeles and start knocking on doors?
No, I think especially, Kathy, with the proliferation of platforms on which you can park your stuff, I would not move to Los Angeles. I would stay in any regional market that's big enough to have a comedy scene of any sort. And I would try that. I would try stand-up. I would try improv. I would blog. I would do a podcast. I would try a number of the platforms. I would do TikTok vids. I would do Instagram vids. I would do different things. And YouTube, even try your own YouTube channel, try to get some stuff out there. I would try all of that stuff and see where your personal funny bone is. See what you respond the most to, what you feel the most natural and confident in doing, and what you're funniest at, what people laugh at the most. But do them all, just because it's a good practice to exercise that funny muscle in virtually anything. And nowadays, I don't envy people starting out right now, because as much as it's improved in one level, which is it's not as brutally competitive as it was when I was coming up. When I was coming up, there was really just the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. If you wanted to make it as a stand-up, you had to get on that show. Yeah. To get on that show, you had to do certain things and get to a skill level. And so the funnel on the top side was huge, and the funnel on the bottom was this little pinprick called the Tonight Show, and you had to squeeze through that. Nowadays, you can make it without ever doing national television of any sort. In fact, television has probably dropped to 4th or 5th on the pecking order of important things to do to try to make a career. There are people on YouTube channels making 7 figures easily and becoming stars in their own right. Now, if they want to transfer that to movies or television, it's a little tricky, but you can still make tremendous amounts of money. There's a lot of great stand-up comedians out there who have, one of them just hosted Saturday Night Live this past weekend, Nate Bargatze, who just worked super hard on the clubs and the theaters around the country, developed their own demographic, and were able to connect with that demographic through social media. And now they've got 2, 3, 4, 5 million followers. They have fans everywhere, and they can just be their own cottage industry. So I would say do that. Try all of those avenues and see where you're comfortable being funny.
How
And then
did you learn? How did you learn to write funny? Gary always says it's really hard to write funny. He says not everybody can do it, and you obviously have a gift.
Well, so does Gary. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
Gary and I were I will not hesitate to say the funniest writers on the student paper were Gary and I. I think some people felt they were funny.
Yeah,
and
you mentioned
Gary always had a very natural rhythm and a really good, sharp eye for a brief joke. And in print, man, it better be brief.
Yeah.
But I kind of took that discipline of sports writing with me when I got into writing. I would write kind of on deadline for myself. I would make myself write jokes about certain topics, even if I didn't find them necessarily funny, just to see if I could write jokes in that area.
Okay.
And when I was a kid, I just loved the Tonight Show. I mean, that's the emotional connection. I just loved watching comics on the Tonight Show. I mean, I remember seeing Rodney Dangerfield on there. I remember seeing Steve Landesberg on there. I remember seeing a comic who had a great influence on me, Franklin Ajayi, who was just so funny. And I kept responding on a really visceral gut level. Even as a kid, I didn't necessarily think, "Ooh, I'm going to be a comic," but I thought, I got to do that. I got to try that. Sometime, some way, I got to do that. And that muscle kind of took over. And then I was a horrible athlete. So, I was a pretty good football player, but I didn't have size. When I got out of flag football, that was it. I would have got killed. I was $120 if I was anything. So comedy and humor was more what I relied on to overcome huge social issues that I had.
That's all right.
I would imagine if they'd had it back then, guys, I would have been somewhere on the spectrum, even just mildly, because I was brutally shy, and I really didn't know how to.
I think a lot of people
are on a natural level. So
I think a lot of people are that way, and they just think that they're the only ones. It's
that's high school in a nutshell, right there. Everybody.
Yeah,
everybody's
that's really
cool
true.
except me. Why is that?
Yeah. And it takes a lot of courage to, walk up to, I remember the first time I interviewed Arnold Palmer. I thought part of me inside is like screaming, "My God, it's Arnold Palmer." And then I realized I have my questions. I can do this. But, the first time you talk to someone like that, it is a little scary. And you just have to get
the first time I would talk to anybody, it was scary. Yes. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. You just got to kind of figure out a way to get over it. And I think, facing your worst fear, which was connecting with people, was the best way to conquer that fear. And that's kind of what I did. And I'll never forget going to a club in Minneapolis, visiting a friend, and we went to see the show. And I just remember thinking, I literally had to leave about 30 minutes in, because I just said, I'm so uncomfortable being down here in the crowd. I think I'm supposed to be up there telling jokes. And that's when I said, all right, that's it. I gotta drop everything. And at the time I was doing some freelance writing, and I was still doing some music. And I just said, I got to drop everything and just do stand-up comedy.
Well, you mentioned writing at the student paper, the Daily Cardinal. And the funniest thing ever written at the Daily Cardinal wasn't actually by you or me. It was from the special edition when the president announced the end of the Vietnam War. I've got a copy of the paper here.
Yeah.
The student paper was a little radical.
Yeah.
So when we said we're getting out of Vietnam, it was victory, meaning North Vietnam, we win. We had special green ink that day. And Jeff,
you can imagine that newsroom, Kathy.
University of Wisconsin is always known for being we had
a radical hotbed. Yeah. And that was most of the newsroom. And then there was this corner of it that was the sports writers,
Yeah.
several of whom had a radical bent to them as well. But
They still do.
what I remember most about that, Gary, was that we had worked on a parody edition of the local city newspaper, the
Wisconsin State Journal.
Wisconsin State Journal.
Yep.
We'd worked on it for what, 3 months? We had meticulously cobbled together a parody of the sports columnist, and then a parody of the football beat writer, and a parody of the Brewers writer. And we covered everything. We worked on it. We said, okay, we're ready. And they said, we'll even give you green ink. And we went, all right. And then we said, okay, it'll come out on Monday or whatever the hell it was, such and such a date. And then we're set in, back then, in hot type. Yeah. We're set. And then, like, overnight, they settled the Vietnam War. They signed the Paris Peace Accords. And so now it went from a 4-page paper to like a 16-page student paper. And they crashed, the editorial department crashed all night and wrote 12 pages of finally the Vietnam War is over stuff. And we got relegated to the back page where the sports normally is. And I'm sure everybody, there's like this whole anti-Vietnam War, 12 pages of it. And then there's a sports parody thing on the end of it. It made no sense at all, but we had to run with it.
Yeah. And apparently we learned, much later that the older guys at the State Journal that we made fun of really didn't like this. Jeff wrote the piece in the style of the esteemed bowling writer Joe Damershausen, who had always sounded like made his rounds at the bowling alleys in the area, and instead of like picking up payola, he just went around and got free food and beer and stuff.
Right.
He became Joe Never Splits'em.
Yeah.
And wrote a humorous. I just reread this stuff. Doesn't hold up quite as well because we actually went to such great lengths to write in the style of the guys that you had to appreciate and know those guys. But anyways, I've got it right here. It said
there
victory.
Well, I've
never seen a funnier headline than that.
No, we were so filled from a humor influence standpoint by National Lampoon Radio Hour, and
I think we were even before that. It was even before that.
Mad Magazine.
Yeah, and I mean, we were listening to things like that and reading things like that. So when we got the opportunity, we just
I say it was all
emulate that.
It was all Mad Magazine's fault.
Yeah.